Hi, this is Pratik Chougule. It's February 2022. I'm here at the Egyptian-Chinese University in Cairo. And what I wanted to talk about is one section of my forthcoming book, American Universities in the Middle East. And in the book, I try to talk about not only American universities in the region and their relation to American foreign policy, but I also wanted to do a comparison of how American universities compare and contrast to the efforts of other countries and the higher educational initiatives that they're pursuing in the region. So China was kind of one of several different countries that I looked at, and it was quite interesting. So what I found is that the Chinese approach on this issue is very, very different from the American one. So for one thing, it's just a very different history. American higher education efforts in the Middle East go back quite a long way, even though the U.S. as a regional power is relatively new. So in the case of the American universities, they were founded in some cases in the 19th century, a long time ago, whereas the Chinese only now are really even beginning to think about promoting higher education in a robust way. So ECU is really the first kind of genuine university in the Middle East. It was only founded in 2013. And the purpose and rationale of the university also is very different. What I found when I was researching the university is that it's for one thing, it's actually headed by a Egyptian, the former Egyptian minister of higher education. But the focus of the university is much less political than what you see in a liberal arts American university. So the education here at ECU is very, very focused on technical kind of disciplines, engineering, and so forth. Very little hint of politics, but the idea basically is that China, through the university, is trying to share more of its just very practical sorts of knowledge that Egypt will need for its development. What China's doing a little bit more on the political side is that they're generally just investing much less in establishing new universities from scratch, and instead they're targeting universities that already exist and trying to promote Confucius institutes in them, which of course there's a whole literature on. And it's almost one of these interesting things that the ECU and other Chinese higher educational initiatives are, in some ways, their political message comes from the fact that these educational institutions are not political. So what I mean is, sort of one of the messages, often implicit but sometimes explicit, that you hear from Chinese educational officials, diplomats, and so forth, is that what they basically say to counterparts, not only in Egypt but throughout the region, what they basically say is, look, when you deal with the Americans, yes, they have these great universities and ideas and funding and so forth, but when you deal with them, it comes with baggage, and the baggage is pressure on human rights, women's rights, development rights, the whole basket of issue, political reform, and it becomes a very complicated thing. Whereas what the Chinese say is, look, we're coming in here, we're giving the technical knowledge, there are no strings attached here, so doing business with us is easier, politically much less risky, and over time we're actually providing a better model to you than before. So, when I look at EgyptianChinese University and others, overall, I think that the scale of these efforts, the kind of funding, etc., I don't think that it's actually any significant match or competition in any ways. They don't really even seek to compete head-on in any meaningful way with American universities. They can't. They offer different things. And the American lead in higher education, the brand, is just so far ahead that the idea of competition in a narrow higher educational sense is not really meaningful. But I do think these universities are worth watching to see how much buy-in they get from Egyptians, how effective they appear to be, and whether or not this larger developmental message that China is pursuing about development in a technocratic sense without interference with politics, whether or not over the long term that poses any kind of a real challenge to American ideals and values.